Dr. Iris O'Connell sat in the dimly lit room, the sterile hum of the terminal filling the silence. Her fingers trembled as she hovered over the screen, a faint reflection of her anxious face glowing on the glass. The file was ready. She had accessed it once before, but never like this. File 117, she muttered to herself, almost in disbelief. She had spent years working, dissecting every piece of human DNA, every alteration caused by war and by the Consortium's experiments. Yet, it was this file, the one that had been sealed for so long, that carried the answers to questions she had spent her life avoiding. The Consortium had made it clear, her work had gone too far. But she couldn't stop. They couldn't stop her now. The screen flickered as she typed the command, and the file unfurled in front of her. But something was different. The data wasn't like the others. This wasn't just raw data, genetic codes, or sterile analysis. No, this was personal. A slow, deliberate click echoed in the room as the first line of text appeared. Page 3 is where I died the first time. The words felt like a punch to her chest. She stared at them for a moment, her mind racing. Page 3, she knew exactly what it meant. It was the moment her family was taken from her. The moment the Consortium's influence had reached into her life, crushing everything in its path. She leaned forward, her heart pounding, and swiped to the next page. The screen flickered, revealing a blood-soaked battlefield. The imagery was brutal, but Iris couldn't look away. Her mother, her father, her younger brother, each of them, trapped in a senseless war that had ended in nothing but death and destruction. The war that had ravaged Earth. The war that had been engineered by the very people who now controlled everything. The Consortium had promised safety, stability, and peace. They had promised humanity's survival. But the truth was darker. They hadn't saved humanity, they had repurposed it. They had engineered a new breed of humans, emotionless and obedient, as part of a twisted experiment to ensure their version of peace. "I'm sorry, Iris," she whispered to herself, the words heavy with a grief that never truly left her. She had tried to escape the pain, to numb it with science, but it had only made her question the very things that defined humanity. She had long suspected that the Consortium's hands weren't clean, but seeing it laid out before her, in such stark detail, made her stomach churn. Her family, her life, it had all been manipulated, all for the sake of an experiment. All for the sake of survival at any cost. A sharp knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Iris jerked back from the screen, her heart leaping into her throat. She quickly minimized the file and closed her eyes, steadying her breath. The knock came again, louder this time. "Iris?" The voice outside her door was calm, almost too calm. Director Kairos Vance. His voice had always carried a chilling assurance, as if he knew things before they happened. She knew he had no idea what she had just uncovered. "I'm in the middle of something, Vance," Iris called out, hoping her voice didn't betray the storm raging inside her. "I'm aware," Vance replied, his tone still smooth and unruffled. "I just wanted to check in. The Consortium expects your report by this evening. We need to finalize your research for the new directive. Your work is essential to the future of humanity." Iris gritted her teeth. She had heard those words too many times before. Essential to the future of humanity was their favorite phrase. It was a reminder of their control over everything, including the very idea of what humanity was supposed to be. "I'll have it done," Iris said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Vance hesitated, and she could almost hear the smile in his voice when he spoke next. "You've been working alone too much, Iris. You need to focus on what matters. Humanity's survival depends on these experiments." She resisted the urge to snap at him. Instead, she took a deep breath, stood up from her desk, and walked over to the window. The city of Neoterra stretched out below her, a glimmering metropolis built on the ashes of the old world. Neon lights flickered across the skyline, and distant ships hovered in the sky, as if they were waiting for something. The people down below, unaware of the truth, continued with their lives. The Consortium had made sure of that. She turned back to the terminal, her fingers tapping lightly on the desk. I'm not interested in enhancements or directions, Vance. I'm interested in preserving what makes us human. That's what matters. The silence on the other end of the comms was deafening. Iris could sense Vance's annoyance, but she didn't care. She was done playing by their rules. The knowledge she had just uncovered, her family's death, the Consortium's experiments, the truth about their intentions, wasn't something she could ignore. She reopened the file, pushing past her rising dread. There was more to find. There had to be more. Page 4, Iris murmured, her finger pressing the key. The next line of text appeared, and her breath caught in her throat. The first test subject was me. Her hands shook as the reality set in. She was the first test subject. They had used her, her blood, her genes, her very life, as part of their experiment. A cold wave of realization swept over her. Iris had known for years that the Consortium wasn't just a shadowy organization, they were the puppeteers pulling the strings of a broken world. But this was beyond anything she had imagined. The very genetic manipulation she had been studying, the reason for her obsession with human resilience, was rooted in her own life. The battle for humanity's future wasn't just academic. It was personal. And Iris knew one thing for certain: the Consortium had underestimated humanity's greatest strength. The ability to fight back, to survive, against all odds, was something they couldn't control. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard once more. There was no turning back now. "I'm coming for you," she whispered to the empty room. And the words felt like a promise. The harsh white lights of the underground lab flickered as Iris paced, the walls closing in on her with each passing second. Her mind raced through the implications of what she had uncovered in the file. She was the first test subject. Her DNA, altered and manipulated, had been the foundation of the Consortium's terrifying experiments. Every sleepless night spent deciphering codes, every hour spent in isolation, now had a new, twisted meaning. Her research had led her to this point. She had uncovered the truth, but the truth was far darker than she could have ever anticipated. They weren't just trying to save humanity, they were reshaping it, erasing the very things that made humans human. Emotion, vulnerability, individuality. They had decided that survival meant becoming something other than human, something cold and mechanical. Something devoid of empathy. Iris couldn't shake the thought: how many others had they used as test subjects? How many lives had they stolen in the name of progress? Her fingers shook as she stood in front of the terminal, trying to steady her breath. It had taken years to build this underground network of rebels, to create the resources necessary to take down the Consortium. But now, more than ever, the stakes had escalated. The war wasn't just about resistance, it was about saving humanity's soul. "Iris," a voice interrupted her thoughts, low and urgent. It was Callum, one of her closest allies in the resistance. His face appeared on the small screen of the comlink embedded in the wall. His expression was tense, his eyes darting behind him as if he was making sure no one overheard. "We've got a problem." Iris's stomach twisted. "What now?" "They're moving forward with the new directive," Callum said, his voice tight with anxiety. "They've accelerated the experiments. They're going to implement phase 2 soon. I don't know exactly what that means, but it's bad. Really bad." "How do you know?" "I overheard something during the raid last night," Callum replied, his voice lowering to a whisper. "Vance and a few of his high-ranking officers were discussing it. They found a way to bypass the human mind's resistance to the enhancements. They want to make the subjects fully compliant, to wipe away any trace of human will." Iris's heart pounded. Fully compliant. The words echoed in her mind, and her mind instantly flashed back to her own family's deaths. The thought of it, of what they were about to do, made her blood boil. "We have to stop them," Iris said, her voice low but steady. "Now. Before it's too late." Callum nodded, his face grim. "We'll need more than just intel. We need hard evidence, something irrefutable. You have to get me into the central lab, Iris. I can't do it without you." She nodded in agreement, though her mind raced through the potential risks. The central lab was the heart of the Consortium's operations, the place where the most classified experiments took place. Getting in was a death sentence for anyone without clearance. But the stakes had never been higher. "I'll get you in," Iris said, her voice firm. "We'll need to move fast. If they're advancing this quickly, we don't have much time before they implement the changes on a mass scale." As Iris turned away from the terminal, her thoughts sharpened. The central lab. It wasn't just a research facility. It was a monument to the Consortium's vision of a perfect humanity. A humanity that had no room for imperfection, no room for emotion, no room for defiance. But Iris refused to let that vision become reality. She wouldn't allow them to strip humanity of its essence. The only way to destroy the Consortium's vision was to destroy its foundations. And those foundations were buried deep within the central lab. Callum's face disappeared from the screen as Iris moved quickly, heading toward her weapons cache hidden beneath the floorboards. Her body was a tight coil of tension, every muscle honed for the coming mission. The underground tunnels that led to the central lab were heavily guarded, filled with traps and high-tech security measures designed to crush any resistance before it had a chance to reach the heart of the operation. She grabbed her gear, light armor, encrypted comlink, and a set of experimental hacking tools designed to disable security systems. The plan was simple: infiltrate the lab, find the main server, and extract whatever data she could to expose the Consortium's true intentions to the world. The problem was getting past the guards. The Consortium soldiers weren't just men in uniform, they were modified humans, enhanced with cybernetic implants designed to make them stronger, faster, and more efficient. Iris had faced them before, but that had been before she had learned the extent of the Consortium's experiments. Now, knowing what they were capable of, she had to question whether she could outsmart them. But there was no turning back. She slipped through the narrow corridors of the underground hideout, her footsteps muffled by the thick walls of concrete. As she moved through the dark, the weight of the mission pressed down on her, but she didn't let it slow her pace. This was it. There was no second chance. If they didn't act now, humanity would cease to exist as they knew it. The Consortium would win. Iris arrived at the tunnel entrance leading to the central lab's access point, hidden behind a reinforced steel door. A guard stood nearby, his back to her, oblivious to her presence. She held her breath, fingers moving quickly over her hacking tool as she bypassed the security code. The door clicked open. The moment she stepped inside, the cold, clinical atmosphere of the lab surrounded her. The air smelled sterile, artificial, a stark contrast to the warmth of human life. She was deep in enemy territory now, and every step felt heavier than the last. The lab was silent, save for the distant hum of machinery. But Iris could feel the presence of something darker, something alive beneath the surface. She had spent years in these halls, but now they felt foreign. The people she had once worked with, her colleagues, were now complicit in the creation of something monstrous. Iris could no longer trust anyone in this building. She moved quickly, keeping to the shadows as she navigated the corridors. The further she went, the more she felt a growing sense of unease. She had come for answers, but the deeper she delved into the heart of the Consortium, the more she realized just how much she had yet to uncover. Finally, she reached the central server room. It was protected by a thick layer of encryption, but Iris had anticipated this. She hooked her hacking device into the terminal, fingers flying over the keys as she bypassed the firewall. As the data began to transfer, she realized something horrifying: the Consortium wasn't just altering humans, they were erasing humanity itself, replacing it with something cold, calculating, and obedient. Iris's heart sank. There was no going back now. The truth was far worse than she could have ever imagined. But this was only the beginning. The data was almost complete. She was about to expose everything. Then, the alarm blared. The door slammed open, and the cold, familiar voice of Director Vance echoed through the speakers. "You think you can stop us, Iris? You're too late." The sound of the alarm echoed through the lab, a chilling siren that reverberated in Iris's bones. Her fingers froze above the console. The data transfer was almost complete, just a few more seconds, and she would have everything she needed to bring down the Consortium. But now, with the security breach exposed, her window of opportunity was closing fast. The door to the server room slammed open, and Iris's heart skipped a beat. Director Vance's cold voice boomed over the intercom. "Iris, don't make this harder than it needs to be. You've seen too much. It's over." She didn't need to see his face to know the smug certainty in his tone. He had always believed that humanity's future lay in cold, emotionless obedience. He was wrong. He had always been wrong. And now, in his desperate bid to control what was left of the human race, Iris would show him just how wrong he truly was. The data transfer finished with a soft beep, and the screen flashed green. A rush of adrenaline surged through her. It was done. But there was no time to savor the victory. The door to the server room began to close, and Iris's escape route was sealed. The guards were closing in. She was trapped. "Iris, you're surrounded. You can't hide forever," Vance's voice crackled over the intercom, his words dripping with smug satisfaction. "You've been a thorn in our side long enough. It's time to end this." Iris's pulse quickened, but her mind remained sharp. She didn't have time to hesitate. The escape routes were compromised, but there was one final option, the emergency exit on the far side of the lab. It would be a gamble, but she had no choice. She quickly activated the emergency comms link. "Callum," she hissed into the microphone, her voice strained. "The data's out. I've got what we need. I'm heading to the emergency exit. Cover me. Get the team ready." There was a crackle of static before Callum's voice came through. "We're on our way, Iris. Just hold on a little longer. You're not alone in this." Iris glanced at the door. The guards were already moving into position. They would be here in seconds. Taking a deep breath, she disengaged from the terminal and sprinted toward the far side of the room, her boots pounding against the cold metal floor. As she passed through the labyrinth of equipment and servers, the lights flickered, casting long, ominous shadows across the room. The sound of footsteps behind her grew louder. There was no turning back now. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she reached the emergency exit. A steel door loomed in front of her, its heavy frame unyielding. She gritted her teeth, fingers flying over the keypad. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a narrow hallway lined with ventilation ducts and maintenance passages. Without a second thought, she darted inside, her movements swift and calculated. The sound of the guards' footsteps was closer now, their pursuit relentless. She couldn't let them catch her. Not now, not when she was so close to bringing the Consortium to its knees. Her hand brushed against the cool metal walls as she maneuvered through the narrow corridors, each turn a step closer to freedom. Sweat slicked her skin, but she didn't slow down. She couldn't afford to. As she rounded the corner, she caught a glimpse of movement, a figure darting out of the shadows. A flicker of panic gripped her chest, but it was only Callum, his face a mask of determination. "Move," Iris urged, her voice barely a whisper. "They're on our tail. We don't have much time." Callum nodded and fell in step beside her. Together, they rushed through the hallways, the distant sound of footsteps growing louder with each passing moment. They were almost there. "We've got your back," Callum said, his tone low but steady. "We'll cover the entrance. Get to the extraction point. You'll be safe." Iris didn't look back. She couldn't afford to. The emergency exit was just ahead, and once they reached it, they would be out of the building. The rest of the team was already waiting. But the door was still several yards away, and every step felt like a lifetime. Just as she reached for the handle, a shout echoed through the hallway. The guards had caught up. "Stop right there," one of them called, his voice hard and authoritative. "You can't escape." Iris's heart lurched. She didn't have time to stop. Without thinking, she turned on her heel, her body moving instinctively. She whipped out a small plasma pistol from her belt and fired a single shot, the bright blue energy beam illuminating the dark hallway. The guard crumpled to the ground, a stunned look on his face as he collapsed. go!" she shouted, adrenaline flooding her veins. Callum didn't hesitate. He grabbed her arm and pulled her through the door. The hallway beyond opened into the shadowy expanse of the city's industrial sector, where the Resistance's safe houses were located. The distant hum of machinery mixed with the faint sounds of life from the underground markets. But there was no time to rest. They were still on the move. Iris could hear the sounds of more guards approaching. The Consortium wouldn't stop until they had her. "Move faster," Iris urged, pushing Callum forward as they ran through the open streets. Her mind raced, but her body knew what to do. They were heading toward the extraction point, a hidden transport hub beneath the city. From there, they would be able to get off-world, away from the Consortium's reach. "Get ready," Callum said, his voice tense. "We've got one chance at this." Iris nodded, her breath ragged. The team was already in position, awaiting their arrival. But there was no telling what Vance would do next. No one could predict his next move. The extraction point was just ahead, a small, nondescript building tucked between towering industrial complexes. As they neared the entrance, Iris heard the whine of an engine. A transport ship, ready for takeoff. She didn't slow down. "Iris!" Callum shouted, his voice sharp. "We're almost there." Just as they reached the transport, a loud crack split the air. A bullet whizzed past Iris's head, narrowly missing her. She spun, pulling Callum with her. A group of Consortium soldiers emerged from the shadows, their weapons trained on them. "Don't move," one of the soldiers barked. For a heartbeat, Iris's world froze. But only for a moment. Then, with a fierce determination in her eyes, she lifted her pistol and fired. The first soldier fell, and chaos erupted.